All of us go through times when we don't feel good enough. Whether it's not thinking that we have what it takes to be successful in our careers, we don't think we're good enough to chase or pursue our biggest goals and dreams. We don't think we're good enough or worthy enough to be truly loved for who we are. We don't think that we are good enough to have a life that we want, to be feeling the way that we want, to be showing up the way that we want, to be able to have what we want. We just don't feel good enough. For some, it might be a pervasive feeling that's there pretty constantly. This sort of underlying shame, and that's what it is, not feeling worthy enough, good enough, valuable enough, that the root of that is core shame. And some experience this quite often. Maybe it's a feeling that is sort of always there. And many of us go through kind of these ups and downs where sometimes we feel like, yeah, I'm doing pretty good at life. I'm succeeding in some things. I've got some areas that I want to work on. I feel pretty decent about my relationships. And we can be having those days or those weeks or those months. And then all of a sudden, wham, thoughts will come into our minds that make us feel like crap. We'll start to think like, maybe if people knew who I really was, then they'd go running for the hills, or they wouldn't truly love me. Or if I don't give people what they want, then I'm completely disposable because people only love me or accept me for what I do for them or for my yes. Or that imposter syndrome that comes up professionally where we're like, well, maybe I actually don't deserve to have the success that I'm having. What am I doing here? The gig is going to be up soon enough and they're going to see that I'm a total fraud and don't actually have what it takes to be in the position that I'm in. Or I'm pursuing this goal, I'm pursuing this dream, but who do I think I am to be doing this? I don't deserve this. I'm not worthy of this. Either way, that experience of not thinking or feeling like you're not good enough feels terrible. And if you are like me, that is a feeling that you don't want to sit in any longer than you have to. And so today I want to talk to you about several ways to get through that feeling of not being good enough. There's some things that I want you to know, or things that maybe you already know, that I'm going to remind you of today to help you get through that when you are feeling like you are not good enough. You can write them down, take some notes. I highly advise it. I know many of you take notes from these talks because there's so much in them. I don't want you to overwhelm yourself by thinking you have to remember everything the first time you watch it. Take some notes, or just take one thing from the talk today that you're going to start remembering, that you're going to start really just paying attention to and focusing on whenever you don't feel good enough. And start there and let that be enough. So we're going to get into these in just a minute. If you're new here, welcome to our incredible little corner on the internet. Take a second, introduce yourself in the comment section below. If you are back again, it is always good to have you. Special shout out to my shifters. If you are a shifter, identify yourself in the comment section below. And for those of you who don't know, the shifters are the members of my membership community, the Shift Society, where we are taking this work to a deeper level. You are being supported and held accountable and guided through learning how to think better, feel better, and live better every single day with a step-by-step process that has helped change the lives of hundreds, if not thousands at this point. You can get more information about that in the description below. Either way, my name is Kristina, and I am a registered clinical therapist, a researcher, a coach, and the creator of my membership community, the Shift Society. And I help heart-centered humans break through the crap that is holding them back so that they can like themselves and their lives more every day. And this shame that we feel in the form of thinking that we are not good enough, worthy enough, lovable enough, valuable enough is something that can really get in our way and hold us back. And if at the very least make us feel pretty terrible when we don't need to be. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about these things to know and remember and keep at the forefront of your mind whenever it is that those thoughts and feelings of not being good enough come up for you. The first thing that I want you to know when you find yourself comparing yourself to other people and looking at who they are and what they have and what they've achieved and what they've accomplished and what their lives look like compared to yours, know that there is always going to be someone with more. There is always going to be someone who appears to have better. There is always going to be someone, if we let ourselves think that way, have something that we think that we need in order to be happy. And if you've ever been on that hamster wheel, you know it is one that does not end. There is always going to be more to achieve and acquire. And if you are looking towards achievement or having things or accomplishing things or acquiring things in order to feel good enough, it's not going to happen. It's going to be a journey that you're going to continue to be on. Something you're going to be grasping for, that you're going to be continuing to grasp for forever. Because that is not what makes us feel good enough. Like, sure, if you reach a goal, it feels good, right? It feels good, and it's good that that feels good. We can be proud of ourselves, we can celebrate ourselves, but that is not going to be the ultimate thing that from there on out makes you feel good enough, because you know it's happened. You've achieved things. You've accomplished things. You've acquired things that you thought at one point was going to make you feel good enough, was going to make you feel complete, was going to get away that nagging voice that tells you that you're not this enough, you haven't done enough of this, you haven't achieved this, you haven't accomplished, you haven't acquired this, your life doesn't look like this, and you have done many of those things that you thought that you needed to do to feel good enough, and you still don't. That little creeping little whisper still creeps up in the back of your mind, trying to tell you that, well, that doesn't really count, or, well, you may have done this, but this person did it this way and then got a bigger result in less time, or this person has this, or this person's life looks like this, or whatever that is, that voice is going to keep coming up and telling you why, even when you have achieved or accomplished or acquired something that you thought you needed to have to feel good enough, it's going to convince you that it's still not enough, because it's not the way that it works. Another question to ask yourself, if you think that achieving, acquiring, or accomplishing something is going to finally make you feel good enough, what is it? What is that thing? What is it that you've told yourself is going to finally make you feel good enough? How much? How far? How big? Where is that goalpost? Have you even defined it? Or are you just like, I just need to do better. I just need to have more. I just need to be more successful. I just need to have more friends. I just need to have a more, beautiful home. I just need to do more interesting things in my life. What actually is it? Have you defined it? And I'm going to guess that you probably haven't. It's just sort of this nebulous thing, this sort of thing out there, this destination of good enough that doesn't even have a clear marker. And so you're always going to be striving for something in somewhere that doesn't even actually exist. The next thing that I want you to remember when you think that you're not good enough is that thoughts are not necessarily truths. How often have you had the thought, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough, there's too many flaws about me that make me unlovable, unworthy, undesirable, whatever that is. But is that true? And if it is true, how do you know? If you're like, well, I had this one boss that told me that my project wasn't good enough, and they wanted me to make some changes. So obviously that means that I'm an incompetent idiot. But does it? Because that is a thought you're having in that moment. But have you also had many things that you've been successful at, that you've done well, that you've accomplished, that you've gotten praise for? Because your brain is kind of forgetting that at this moment. Or if you're like, well, this person broke up with me, so that means that I'm unlovable. No one's ever going to love me or find me, desirable or want to actually invest in a relationship with me. But does it? Because have you had other relationships? Do you have other people in your life, romantic or not, who do deeply care about you, who invest in you, who are involved with you, who love you? So is it true then that you are unlovable? Do you see that? How we have these thoughts in these moments? We'll have this experience that obviously feels bad, obviously brings up some sadness or some disappointment or some hurt, right? And we have these emotions, and that's a normal thing to have when we experience a loss or a disappointment. It's normal to feel those things, but then your thoughts come into your brain and try to convince you of all of these things that are not true. A relationship ending does not make you unlovable. A result at work, not getting the exact result you were hoping for, does not make you an incompetent idiot. Not reaching your goals and dreams at a time frame, or your life going the way that you thought it would go within a certain time frame, does not make you a failure as a human being. But those thoughts can get in there and try to convince us otherwise. So remember that your thoughts are not truths. And if you have a habit of believing everything that you think and buying into it and then letting those thoughts make you feel all kinds of terrible, then you need to get my 10-minute guided mindfulness exercise. This is one that's it's free, completely free. It's in the description below. You can get the link for that, download it immediately and put some earphones in and start listening to that. And that's going to teach you how to not believe everything you think, not get so caught up in your thoughts. It's going to be an essential first step for that. So make sure that you get that mindfulness exercise. The next thing to remember when you don't think you're good enough, when you don't feel good enough, is that your mistakes, failures, or shortcomings do not define you. Again, our human brains like to kick us when we're down. So let's say that, again, like you take on a project at work and it doesn't get the result that you want. You get criticism on it, you get told that you're off the mark, it's not accepted, it's not good enough. The project isn't good enough. But then you make that mean that you are not good enough. And then you start to remember all the other times in your life, dating back to when you were probably 6 years old in kindergarten, when you drew a picture of a balloon and your teacher was like, that looks like a weird balloon. That's not really a balloon. And you're like, see, I failed at that too. I'm a total failure, right? I made this mistake. I did this wrong. And your brain likes to be right because our brains are lazy. So it's like, okay, I had this project denied, or I got this criticism on this assignment. And they didn't like it. My boss didn't like it. My colleagues didn't like it. And it's like, see, here's why I'm not good enough. So that time in kindergarten with the balloons, and then this other time in high school when I did the math problem, and then when my mom, criticized me for doing this other thing or whatever that is. And your brain's like you're reminding you of all the things that you've done wrong. All the things that you've gotten feedback on that haven't been great. And maybe your brain can come up with a good 5, 6, 7 examples in that exact moment. You're like, see, I've got all this proof. But that's 5, 6, or 7 examples from how many years of your existence? How many experiences you've had where you've had some failures or shortcomings or made some mistakes, but how many things have been successful? How many things have gone fine? How many things have you done well? But it's funny how our brains in those moments like to kick us when we're down, like to make us feel even worse by having this one experience of failure, of setback, of mistake, and then thinking about every single other one that it can come up with in that moment from 10, 20, 30, 40 years of our life. And maybe it can only come up with, a handful or two, but thinking about how many other things you've done well. That your mistakes and your shortcomings do not define you. Mistakes, shortcomings, and failures are part of all of our lives. None of us are perfect. None of us can be perfect, and that's not actually a goal we want to have. But shame likes to convince us that unless we are perfect, we are nothing. We are unworthy. We are not good enough. We are not valuable enough. So we're reaching for a goal that doesn't exist to make us feel something we desperately want. But the goal doesn't exist. And so we are putting our whole lives on hold to feel a certain way, to achieve certain things that are going to make us think that we are something, but that destination doesn't exist. Your mistakes and your shortcomings do not define you. They are part of you. Yeah. They are part of all of us. Yeah. But there's so many other parts of you. There are so many other factors that you can use to define you. So thinking about that, thinking about knowing that our brains, just that negativity bias that we've talked about here before, our brains like to overemphasize our shortcomings. It's just we have this natural negative bias in our brains that likes to overemphasize our shortcomings and our failures and underemphasize our strengths and our successes. And think about that for a second. How often do you get yourself caught in thoughts of feeling like you're not good enough, feeling like you don't have what it takes, thinking that you're a failure, right? Thinking that you are unworthy. How often does your brain go down that and then like to kind of sit in that place versus your brain going down the other path and being like, yeah, I'm doing all right. I got a lot of stuff going for me. I'm pretty proud of myself for the things that I've accomplished, for where I've gotten to. Like, how often does your brain automatically go into those places? And so we can look at that and see how our brains so much more easily like to kind of grasp on to the negatives, and how much more work it takes to grasp on and really connect with the positive. So knowing that your brain is playing tricks on you, right? Your brain is not looking accurately at the evidence. Another thing to remember when you don't feel good enough, and when those thoughts and feelings of not being good enough are holding you back and preventing you from living the way you want to live, from going for the things that you want to go for, from loving the way that you want to love, from having the experience of life that you want to have, is that life is short. And we only get to do this once. This isn't a dress rehearsal. And so letting these beliefs take over and dictate your life, this shame take over and dictate your life and hold you back and get in your way and stop you from living and loving and having and experiencing the life that you want to. What is that costing you simply by believing these thoughts? And remember, our thoughts are not always truths. And we don't have to believe everything we think. And our brains have that negativity bias. But what is it costing you by giving into that and believing that? And what are you missing out on? And now we can't go back and change the past, and that's okay. We don't need to feel bad about that. We don't need to feel guilty about that. We don't need to lament that. What we can do is use this information to start doing, thinking, feeling, showing up different today. The rest of your life, no matter how long you're here, and none of us knows how long that's going to be for each of us, the rest of our lives from here, we can think different. We can feel different. We can show up different. We can have different. Asking yourself, do you want to continue to let shame and fear and these thoughts, just thoughts, get in your way? Dictate your life, stop you, prevent you, and hold you back. The next thing to remember, when you don't feel good enough, when you think that you need to be this superhuman, spectacular, amazing, famous or noteworthy in some way human being that needs to have it all together, have done something monumental and world-changing in these big momentous ways, that you have to be the best, that you have to be the top, that you have to have the most, your life has to be the most together, or whatever that is that you have set as that goalpost to finally let yourself feel good enough. Know that we are all pretty average. And that's okay. We are all average. We are all kind of in the middle of the bell curve. And the truth is, most of us don't want to be outside of that bell curve because, outside of the bell curve, usually we have something like sociopathology or psychopathology, or you have incredible genius, which, makes you an outlier. And you probably hear from people, if you've heard about people who have been sort of these outliers, have been the very top, who have, been these geniuses or these, CEOs of these multi-billion-dollar companies, and, they are still not happy, right? They still don't feel satisfied. They're still human at the end of the day. Having and being and accomplishing and achieving and being at the very top and being the best and being, way up there is not what's going to make you feel good enough, because there's people that have it and they still don't feel good enough. Now, I'm not saying it's bad to have big goals, to have big dreams, to pursue them, to work towards them. That's not bad, but don't do it under the illusion that it's going to finally make you feel good enough. It's going to feel good. You're going to enjoy it. You're going to celebrate it. You're going to kind of see how you can stretch yourself and see just sort of what you can do, and you're going to grow, and that's going to be interesting, and you're going to have some cool experiences in life. But do not fall under the lie that it's going to finally make you feel worthy enough, good enough, valuable enough, because that doesn't come from the outside. We're all pretty average, and that's okay. It's okay to be average. You don't have to be an outlier. You don't have to be outside of that bell curve to prove your worthiness. Because if that were the case, none of us would be worthy, because we're all kind of in the middle of the bell curve. So if being outside of the bell curve, outside of kind of the middle, right, outside of that average, if that's what it takes to be good enough, then, 99.9% of us, or 99%, whatever, are not ever going to be good enough. So know that good enough is not a destination. It's a decision. It's a decision that we make every day. Which brings us to our next point of things to remember, that good enough is not earned. Worthiness is not proved. Feeling good enough, believing that you're good enough, is an acceptance that you are worthy because you were born. That's it. That's all that's required. You are here, so you are supposed to be here. You are here, and that is the only prerequisite for worthiness, is the fact that you exist. And anything your brain tries to do to convince you otherwise is just lies. The other thing to remember, when you don't think that you're good enough, back to what we were talking about a minute ago, is that you don't have to do big and splashy things to make an important difference in the world, to have an impact in the world. You can do such small things and have an impact on the people around you every single day. You can smile at someone walking down the street. You can look at, the cashier at the grocery store or the barista at Starbucks and just say hello and ask them how they're doing. You can chit chat with someone while you're in line at the movie ticket office or booth or whatever it's called. The box office, and just say hello and ask someone how they're doing. You can hold the door for someone. Did I say that already? You can text a friend and just tell them you're thinking about them. You can pick up an actual phone and call someone to check in and have a little chat. I know, do people still call people? I do. I love talking on the phone, but that's maybe because I am old enough that calling people on the phone was a very regular thing for the majority of my life. Thinking about a friend who just came camping, a friend who was in town from Germany visiting one of my close friends, and he was here, and a big group of us went camping, and this friend who was visiting from Germany doesn't have kids, and the rest of us have kids, and he was like one of the most gracious, thoughtful, helpful, caring people I have ever met, especially for someone like without kids. And he was right in there, anticipating people's kind of needs and just being really thoughtful and helping out, and just like such a wonderful human being. And it made such a difference on all of our weekends who had kids, because we had this other adult who was just there. And I've seriously never met an adult without kids who has been that conscientious of other people. And that just sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Just that aware of what's going on with others and what might be helpful, and just such a lovely human being. And then my other friend who was there, and, I was like, hey, like I was really tired one day. He's like, you go take a nap, and then we're going to go and I'll play games, and I'll get your kids and we'll all play games together. And then I was like laying there in our tent while we were camping, and they were outside playing games. And I just heard the laughter of my daughter and the joy that was being had, and how these other grownups were, taking my kids under their wings and playing with them and having a great time with them and connecting with them. And that meant so much to me. It meant so much to me that they did this, that they invested in my children in this way, and that my children, especially my daughter, my eldest, was having such a fun time. And just hearing her sitting there laughing and playing these games with them, it made a difference in my day. It made a difference in my life. So know that you don't have to do big splashy things to make a difference in the world. You can do small things. You can be just be kind of thoughtful and generous and caring towards another human being in a small way, to show love, to show care, to show respect. And those are opportunities every single day, everywhere. That counts. And it counts a lot more than we realize. And it can even count more than some of these people who are doing these really big things. because all of us can do small things that can make a big difference every single day. If not feeling good enough is something that you struggle with, then make sure that you get on the wait list for the Shift Society. In there is a masterclass series on deep lasting confidence. It is included in your membership when you join. This is my deep dive masterclass series on the key steps to building deep lasting confidence. It is deep and it is brain changing and it is life changing, and that will be waiting for you as soon as you join the Shift Society. We're going to be opening up registration again, hopefully soon, but either way, get on the wait list so that you do know when we open up. We only open up a couple times a year. So make sure that you're on the wait list so you don't miss it. And we're only open for registration for a very short amount of time. Get on the wait list for the Shift Society. Get that 10-minute guided mindfulness exercise. And remember, good enough is not a destination. It is a decision. And a decision that we re-decide every single day. Always good to have you here. Take good care of yourselves. Take good care of those around you. Bye for now.